They say the dead don't linger where they were unhappy. But what if the unhappiness was so deep, so unfinished, that even death couldn't close the door? For over 2 decades, staff members have refused to work certain corridors after dark. Security logs show motion where no one should be. And in the same rooms where Diana once wept alone, visitors report the unmistakable scent of her perfume, hanging in the air like a question that was never answered. This isn't folklore. These are testimonies from people who have nothing to gain and everything to lose by speaking. The sightings have become more frequent, more specific, and what they describe isn't just a shadow or a trick of light. It's her, walking the halls she once called a prison, still searching, perhaps, for the peace she never found in life. To understand why Diana's spirit might still walk these ancient halls, we must first understand what those walls witnessed during her lifetime. Princess Diana wasn't just a member of the royal family. She was a woman trapped inside a gilded cage, watched by millions, yet profoundly alone. Her marriage to Prince Charles was meant to be a fairy tale, but behind the palace doors, it became something far darker. The world saw the glamour, the charity work, the radiant smile, but inside Kensington Palace, inside the private apartments where cameras couldn't reach, Diana was fighting battles that would eventually consume her. She spoke openly, in later years, about her struggles with bulimia, depression, and the suffocating isolation of royal life. She described feeling like a prisoner, monitored and controlled, her every move scrutinized not just by the public, but by the very institution that was supposed to protect her. The palace, with all its grandeur and history, became her cage. And cages, as we know, leave marks on the soul. Marks that don't always fade, even after death. August 31st, 1997, Paris. The world woke to news that felt impossible. Princess Diana, the people's princess, was dead. The circumstances surrounding her death have been analyzed, debated, and questioned for decades. A high-speed chase through a tunnel, paparazzi, a driver under the influence. Theories of conspiracy swirled almost immediately. Was it truly an accident, or was there something more sinister at play? These questions have never been fully answered, not in a way that satisfies everyone. And perhaps that's why Diana's story feels so unfinished. Perhaps that's why her presence has never truly left. In the immediate aftermath of her death, something extraordinary happened. The British public, often reserved and traditional, broke. They wept openly in the streets. They left mountains of flowers outside Kensington Palace, so many that the scent of roses and lilies hung over London for weeks. It was as if the entire nation was mourning not just a princess, but a part of themselves. Diana had represented something vulnerable, something real in a world of carefully managed images, and now she was gone, ripped away suddenly, violently, and far too young. But grief, especially grief that deep and collective, leaves its own kind of energy. And in places where tragedy and sorrow have soaked into the very stones, that energy doesn't always dissipate. It lingers, it waits, and sometimes it takes form. The first reported sighting came less than a year after her death. A palace staff member, a woman who had worked at Kensington Palace for over 15 years, was locking up one of the state apartments late one evening. She was alone, or so she thought. As she turned to leave, she saw a figure standing near the window, silhouetted against the dim light from the courtyard below. The figure was slender, feminine, wearing what appeared to be a long dress. The staff member froze. She knew instantly and without question that she was looking at Diana. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She simply stood there, staring, as the figure turned slowly toward her. The face, she later said, was unmistakable. The soft features, the sad eyes, the way her head tilted slightly to one side, as if listening to something far away. For a moment, their eyes met. And then, as quickly as she had appeared, Diana was gone. Not walking away, not fading slowly, just gone, as if she had never been there at all. The staff member reported what she had seen, but quietly, cautiously. She knew how it would sound. She knew the palace would dismiss it, or worse, that she might lose her position for spreading what they would call rumors. But she wasn't the only one. Over the following months and years, other members of staff began to share their own experiences. A cleaner who heard the sound of crying coming from Diana's former bedroom, even though the room was empty and locked. A security guard who saw a woman in white walking through the sunken garden in the middle of the night, only to vanish when he approached. A tour guide who smelled Diana's signature perfume, a custom blend she wore exclusively, in rooms where no perfume should be. These weren't attention seekers. These were professional, credible individuals who had everything to lose by speaking up. And yet they did, because what they experienced was too real, too profound to ignore. Kensington Palace isn't the only location where Diana's presence has been felt. Althorpe, the Spencer family estate where she was laid to rest, has its own history of unexplained phenomena. Visitors to the grounds have reported seeing a woman in white near the lake where Diana's grave is located. Some say they've heard her voice, soft and distant, carried on the wind. Groundskeepers have spoken, off the record, about lights appearing in windows of the estate at night, lights that shouldn't be there, about the feeling of being watched when walking alone through certain rooms. Even Buckingham Palace, the seat of the monarchy itself, has not been immune. Staff members there have been more reluctant to speak openly, understandably so. But whispers circulate, accounts of cold spots in hallways Diana once walked, the sound of footsteps in empty corridors, and most chillingly, reports of her figure appearing in mirrors, standing just behind someone, only to disappear when they turn around. But the most recent sighting, the one that has reignited global interest and brought us here, is different. It's more detailed, more witnessed, and far more difficult to dismiss. It happened just months ago inside Kensington Palace. In the early hours of a November morning, 3 separate individuals, none of whom knew each other, all reported seeing the same thing. A member of the night security team was making his rounds through the King's State apartments. These rooms are open to the public during the day, but at night they're locked, silent, and empty. As he passed through the King's drawing room, his flashlight flickered. He stopped, checked the battery. It was full. He continued, and that's when he saw her. Standing near the fireplace, exactly where Diana had once posed for an official portrait, was a woman. She was wearing a dark dress, her hair short and blonde, styled the way Diana wore it in the mid-90s. The guard's breath caught in his throat. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak. The woman turned her head slowly, looking directly at him, and he saw her face clearly. It was Diana, not a resemblance, not someone who looked like her. It was her. Her expression, he later told investigators, was one of profound sadness. Not anger, not fear, just sorrow, deep and endless. She seemed to be trying to say something, her lips moving, but no sound came out. The guard took a step forward instinctively, and the moment he did, she was gone. The room was empty again, the fireplace cold, the air still. Shaken, he radioed for backup and reported what he'd seen. Within minutes, 2 other security personnel arrived. They searched the room thoroughly. Nothing. No signs of entry, no disturbances, no rational explanation. But here's where it gets even stranger. While they were searching, one of the other guards stationed at a different entrance to the palace reported seeing a woman matching the exact same description walking through the sunken garden. He didn't know about the first sighting yet. He hadn't been told. And yet his description was identical. Same dress, same hairstyle, same overwhelming sense of sadness. A third witness, a member of the night cleaning crew, was in the hallway connecting the state apartments when she saw a figure pass through a closed door. Not open it, pass through it. She dropped the supplies she was carrying and ran. She later resigned from her position, refusing to work in the palace again. The palace's official response has been, as expected, silence. No public statements have been made. No acknowledgement of the reports, but internally things have changed. Certain areas of the palace are no longer accessed alone at night. Security protocols have been quietly adjusted, and staff members, those willing to speak anonymously, admit that there's a palpable unease now, a tension that wasn't there before. Paranormal investigators have long argued that hauntings are most common in places where trauma occurred. Diana's life in the palace was marked by emotional suffering. Her marriage fell apart within those walls. She battled mental health crises there. She felt betrayed, abandoned, and trapped. That kind of pain leaves an imprint. Some researchers call it residual energy, a kind of psychic recording that replays under certain conditions. Others believe it's something more conscious, more intentional, a spirit that chooses to remain because it has unfinished business. What could Diana's unfinished business be? Some believe she's trying to protect her sons, watching over them from beyond. Others think she's attempting to communicate something about her death, something that was never revealed, never spoken. There are those who believe she simply cannot rest because the circumstances of her passing were so sudden, so violent, that her spirit doesn't fully understand it's no longer alive. Psychic mediums who claim to have connected with Diana's spirit describe her as restless, searching, unable to find peace. They say she moves between the places that mattered most to her in life, drawn to the energy of those she loved and the locations where she suffered most intensely. They describe her presence as gentle but sorrowful, a soul caught between worlds, neither fully here nor fully gone. Skeptics, of course, dismiss all of this as wishful thinking, grief-induced hallucinations, or outright fabrication. They point to the power of suggestion, the psychological phenomenon where people see what they expect to see, especially in places associated with tragedy. They argue that the palace staff, aware of Diana's story, are predisposed to interpret ambiguous experiences as paranormal. A shadow becomes a ghost, a draft becomes a presence, a memory becomes a sighting. But skepticism doesn't explain the consistency of the reports. It doesn't explain why multiple witnesses who didn't communicate with each other describe the same figure in the same locations. It doesn't explain the physical reactions, the genuine terror, the life-altering decisions made portrayed by those who claim to have seen her. And it certainly doesn't explain why, more than 25 years after her death, Diana's presence feels stronger now than it ever has before. Perhaps it's because the world is finally listening. Perhaps it's because the truth about her life, her struggles, and the forces that opposed her are becoming clearer. Perhaps Diana's spirit has been trying to be seen all along. And only now, when the conversation around mental health, institutional abuse, and the dark side of royalty has reached a critical mass, are we finally ready to acknowledge what's been there all along. Can you imagine what it must be like to walk those halls at night, knowing that history has soaked into every stone, that suffering has left its mark in every corner? Can you imagine turning a corner and seeing her standing there, the woman the world loved and lost, still searching for something she never found in life? It's not just a ghost story, it's a tragedy that refuses to end. It's a reminder that some wounds never heal, some questions never get answered, and some souls never find their way home. The palace will never officially confirm these sightings. The institution that once controlled every aspect of Diana's life will continue to control her narrative, even in death. But the people who work there, the ones who've seen her, who've felt her presence, who've heard her voice in the silence, they know the truth. Diana is still there, still walking the corridors where she once lived and suffered, still searching, still waiting, still haunting the palace that could never contain her spirit when she was alive, and certainly cannot now. And perhaps that's exactly as it should be. Perhaps Diana in death has finally claimed the one thing she was denied in life, the freedom to exist on her own terms, to be seen and heard without permission, to remain in the hearts and minds of the world, not as a carefully managed image, but as she truly was, a woman, a mother, a soul that suffered, and a presence that refuses to be forgotten. The question is not whether Diana's ghost walks the palace. The question is what she's trying to tell us, and whether we're finally ready to listen